Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a quiet but massive revolution in how we make agreements. We're putting old school pen and paper contracts head to head with their new code-driven counterparts. It's a really fundamental shift, moving from human trusts to pure cryptographic certainty. So let's start with something we all get. Traditional contracts. They're the bedrock of our society. They turn a simple promise into a legally binding deal for pretty much everything, whether you're starting a new job or buying a house. But as anyone who's been through it knows, this system, well, it has its problems. It's built on people and paper, which usually means high legal fees, long delays, and honestly, the constant risk of messy fights. There's just so much friction.
Okay, so to really unpack this, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the foundation, the traditional contract. Then we'll meet the challenger. We'll put them head to head, see where they're already shaking things up in the real world, and finally, we'll take a little peek over the horizon at what's coming next.
All right, first up, the foundation. Let's talk about the reigning champ of agreements, the traditional pen and paper contract that we've been relying on for literally centuries. So what is a traditional contract really? At its heart, it's a promise that's backed by the entire legal system. The whole point is to create trust and clarity, because if someone breaks their word, you can, in theory, get the courts to step in and make it right. And making one is a very human process. It all starts with one person making an offer and another person accepting it. Then you need consideration. That means something of value has to be exchanged. Crucially, both sides have to actually intend for this to be a real, legally binding deal. And the whole thing is held together by the threat of enforcement from lawyers and judges. Now, let's bring in the challenger. And this is an idea that was actually dreamed up way back in the 1990s by a cryptographer named Nick Szabo, long before the tech even existed to make it work. Talk about thinking ahead. The easiest way to wrap your head around a smart contract is to think of it like a vending machine. It's a perfect analogy. You do your part of the deal. You put the money in, and the machine automatically does its part. It gives you the snack. There's no clerk, no one to argue with. It just works. So in more technical terms, a smart contract is just a computer program. But, and this is the most important part, it doesn't just run on any old server. It lives on a blockchain. That's a secure, shared database that means the contract's rules are out in the open for everyone to see, and once they're set, they're totally unchangeable, immutable. The logic behind it is just beautiful in its simplicity. First, you take the agreement, if you do this, then I'll do that, and you write it into code. You deploy it to the blockchain. Then, the contract just sits there and waits for a specific trigger, like a payment coming in. The moment that condition is met, bam, the code runs all by itself, no humans needed. And the result is locked onto the blockchain forever, for everyone to see. Okay, so let's put these two side by side, because this is where you really start to see the huge game-changing differences between these two ways of making a deal. Looking at this, the contrast is just stark. Smart contracts are all about automation and security. They can slash costs because you're cutting out the middlemen, the lawyers, the banks. But, and this is the critical trade-off, all that automation comes at the price of flexibility. You can renegotiate a traditional contract with a conversation. A smart contract, once it's on the blockchain, it's basically set in stone. Now, this isn't just some far-off, futuristic concept. Smart contracts are already out there in the real world, and they are quietly starting to reshape some absolutely massive industries. For starters, they're the engine that drives decentralized finance, or DeFi, automating things like lending and trading. In supply chains, they can track a product from the factory floor right to the store shelf. They're even used for insurance. Just imagine a flight insurance policy that automatically pays you the instant your flight is officially delayed. No forms, no calls, no hassle. Which of course brings up a really important question. A smart contract just lives on the blockchain, right? It's kind of in its own digital world. So how on earth does a piece of code know if something happened in the real world, like your package actually got delivered? And the answer is this really clever thing called a blockchain oracle. You can think of it like a trusted messenger. It's a service that securely connects the blockchain to the outside world, feeding it real-world data like weather updates or shipping statuses. It tells the smart contract what's going on. But here's the catch. You've just swapped a human go-between for a data go-between, which has its own set of potential problems and failures. Because for all their power, let's be clear, smart contracts are not a magic bullet. They're far from perfect. So let's talk about the big hurdles they face right now and what the promise is for the future. On the one hand, yes, you get incredible speed, lower costs, and that amazing cryptographic security. But on the other hand, the code is law. And if there's a bug in that code, it can be an absolute disaster. The infamous DAO hack back in 2016 is the perfect example. A tiny flaw was exploited and millions of dollars were just drained. And on top of that, in a lot of places, their legal status is still a big question mark. But looking ahead, the future for this tech is pretty exciting. Soon, we'll see better ways for contracts to work across different blockchains. Further down the road, you can imagine them integrating with AI to make more complex decisions, or with the Internet of Things. Your smart fridge could literally use a smart contract to order more milk when you run out. But the big, eventual goal for all of this? Clear legal recognition.
So I think the most important takeaway is this. Smart contracts are probably not going to replace traditional legal agreements entirely. Think of them as a powerful new tool in our toolbox. They're at their best when a task is logical, repeatable, and doesn't need that human touch of nuance or the ability to be flexible later on.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought to chew on. In a world that runs on complicated, messy, nuanced human relationships, what is the ultimate place for rigid, automated lines of code? Will the idea of code is law ever fully replace the interpretation and judgment of a courtroom? And maybe more importantly, should it? That's really the billion-dollar question.